Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we figure out how to build products and recover from burnout. I'm Brian.
And I'm Benedikt. Each week we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we figure things out. Today is March 9th and I'm feeling excited.
This is episode number 81 and I'm still feeling sleepy. But I'm excited. I am excited because what's going on today, Benedikt?
We have a guest on. We have John Nunemaker on. Hi, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, Brian is sleepy, but I'm super pumped. Because,
the coffee's still kicking in. I'll be so excited in just a minute or two. I'm certain.
Oh, I've got cold brew just flowing through my veins, so man. I'm ready to go.
So the reason why I'm excited is because we have you on, and I said it before, before we hit record. I've been following your stuff for years. Basically, feels like since I started developing Ruby, and there's no way to be a Ruby developer without coming across one of your blog posts or one of your open source projects at some point. So it feels excited to meet you and to talk to you, and especially talk to you about your journey of being an independent software developer, building I don't know, how many products did you build over the course of your career?
Actually launched with billing, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, I think right now. Trying to remember, I think that's it. Maybe 5. I think 4.
And then there are a couple of projects without billing. So it's you have a track record of doing stuff on the internet, and that's pretty exciting. And it always felt super inspiring to me to just see someone be an independent developer and still building products and being successful with it. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. And
I do a good job of making it look that way. So,
well, teach us how to do that. That's also valuable.
No, that's really great to hear. Honestly, it's inspiring to me. I feel like a lot of times you don't get that feedback. You just get, issues that get created or bug reports or people who hate the HTTP party post install message. So you don't hear that kind of stuff. So I miss that from conferences, going to conferences and stuff, because I feel like I'd always run into people and then we'd have really great conversations and then I feel really inspired. So I already feel ready to go and now hack on something new just from hearing that. So
well, yeah, maybe we should recap a little bit and talk a bit of the things you did in the past and the products you launched. I remember maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you were building Harmony, a CMS, and Gauges, a analytics tool, as well as Beaker Deck for sharing talks. How did that come to be? How did you start all those?
Yeah, it's funny because it starts simple and then eventually all of a sudden you're like, geez, I have 3 or 4 things. What's going on? And I can't figure out how to push forward on each of them. It feels like inching along. But it started, I was working at Notre Dame and we were just cranking out websites. And I was like, we really should have a content management system that makes a lot of sense. That's customized for how we push out these content management or these websites. And I was like, this makes sense to me. We should do it. I couldn't get them on board with Rails, but I loved Rails, huge fan. So we ended up hosting externally and kind of I don't know, I guess I would say sneaking it in. And then it got big enough that it had to become a supported thing. And now I think there's 400 or 500 sites at the University of Notre Dame that are powered by that. And that was called Conductor, which was a play on Rails. And then it also had N and D in it. And so I was there and I worked with another guy, Steve Smith. We got to be really good friends. We kind of started separating duties when we worked on things. So he was kind of front end, I was kind of back end. And then we both kind of overlapped a little bit in our Venn diagram. And then it was he left, and about a year later, he, posted this photo on his back deck where he was hacking. And I was like, that looks nice. And he was like, you want to do it? And I was like, okay. So I left Notre Dame and joined him, and we knew right away, he was doing the same thing. He was consulting, building a lot of websites and stuff like that. And we just, it was Basecamp, 37 Signals, that if you're not making your own product, do you really exist, season in the web time? And I was like, we should start with, what we know. Like we built Conductor and it was awesome, but like now we can't use it because we're outside of Notre Dame.
Mhm.
So let's like take what we learned and rebuild it and then use it on the outside. So that's kind of how that started. And then it's like, once you have a, way to make a website that's awesome, like the natural next thing is like, well, what's going on this website? Like, are people visiting it? Are they not? Like, what pages are popular? All that kind of stuff. And the thing that I like noticed is I hated Google Analytics. Like every time I opened it up, it was just like, it has everything you want. And when it has everything, how do you find anything?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it's a much better product and more full and more customizable and stuff now, but that almost makes it even worse, And I was like, okay, I just want something simple. And randomly, I had a hernia and I had hernia surgery, and I like couldn't really work for like a month while I was recovering. And then I was like, well, what if I just like kind of eased back into it for fun with this like, silly stats app idea that I had. And I like hacked together this one file, Sinatra, and I was really into MongoDB at the time and threw that in, and then like got something that was working pretty decent. And then like the rest of the team was like, this actually is like really useful. I'm finding myself going to this every day and using it instead of like, we should probably make this a thing. So we were like, all right. So we launched it and did a 7-day free trial. And we were like, we've got 7 days to, slap some billing on it and see like what happens. So that's kind of like the path on those. And then, when you want to, like when you build products, you have to hustle them. And so the best way we could figure out to hustle them was like, let's just start going to all the conferences and talking about, not necessarily our products, but talking about how we built our products. Like what's the tech that we used? What's cool about how we use the tech? Like how can you use it in the same way? Like for Mongo, like how to build, MongoDB for analytics and stuff like that. Did a bunch of those talks. And the same thing with on the Rails side, just the stuff that you learn. You start doing all these presentations and stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, the only thing that exists is SlideShare. And I mean, that was literally like the only thing, and it was really bad back in the day. And it was, like the whole thing was just ads and like covered and stuff. You're like, where's the deck? I don't even know where the deck is. And so we were like, you know what? Like one day I was just like messing around with ImageMagick, and I accidentally like passed a PDF into ImageMagick, and it made an image. And I was like, whoa. I was like, wait a second. Like, I bet we could turn that into a product, because I didn't even know that was possible. And so it was just this kind of like light bulb. And at the time there was a guy we were friends with from like a local Ruby group. And he was like, you know what? Like, I want to be a programmer. He was more on like the IT side. And he was like, I want to be a programmer. So John Hoyt's his name. And he was like, let's just like, I'll build this. Like, you just give me the shell commands that you got, and I'll just start, whipping the Rails app together. And so that's kind of how it started. And then we were like, we should just work together. So then he was the first person we hired. And so that's kind of the story on those three, I guess. They just kind of all were like, I don't know, kind of happenstance. It was just need, like a direct need in front of me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that sounds well, kind of unexpected. It sounds like, other than Harmony, it was like all lucky mistakes or something, like, or lucky coincidences that led to the inception of the product.
Real quick, the thing that strikes me about all of those CMS analytics speaker deck is you're like, okay, let's do something better than WordPress or similar. Let's do something better than Google Analytics.
Yeah.
Let's do something better than SlideShare, which is SlideShare owned by LinkedIn still? Or?
Not anymore. They just, who was it? The Scribd or Scribed? Okay. I'm not sure which it is.
However you pronounce it. Right.
Yeah.
But either way, all of them, there's like major player. And is that deliberate, or is it just like, is that a product approach of yours, or is that just how it kind of happened?
I mean, like, it's funny. I have not really thought about it, but like, now that you've said that, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I have a bad habit of doing that, and I feel like I'm doing it again, even with like Flipper, because it's like there's Launch Darkly, Split, there's a million other ones that are out there right now. But I don't think it's like from it's not intentional, and it's not from a place of arrogance. Like, I think I can do it better. I think it's mostly just like, you just feel friction, and you're like, I think I can reduce this friction, and I think some amount of people that would be worth my time to do it, like will find value in this like reduction of friction. And so it just kind of like, because these are big things and I use them a lot, then I notice the friction, and then I'm like, okay, like I go knock heads with Steve, and I'm like, how can we make this better? And eventually I feel like we come up with something that's not better, but it's better for some subset of the audience. And our goal has never been to make a unicorn or to like any of that kind of stuff. It's just been make good software and that people find value for and they pay for. And I think, picking a known market when you want to do that, it's actually like really wise and makes a lot of sense. It was never intentional. That's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah. When there's a behemoth in the market, and what you just said was, we don't have to make it better for everybody. We can just make it better for some people.
Yeah.
If a colossal amount of people are buying it, then a small niche is a legit market, as opposed to starting from a niche market and trying to satisfy a subset of those people. You're probably going to have a really hard time.
Yeah. I think it can be a hard growth path, because you're like, well, why would you like Google Analytics? It's like, why would people use gauges when they can get Google Analytics for free? And it's like, you know what? Some people just want to get an email every morning with like what pages got hit the most, where did they come from, how many views did I have? It's all vanity, and I love it, and that's all I want. I just want this pretty little email, and if I want to be able to go to the website, and I just want to see like live somebody clicking around on it. Like those are the two things that we were like, that was what we wanted. There's not really like it's not event tracking, it's not goals, it's not funnels, it's not all these other things that exist that are probably very important. It's like, I just want to go and feel better about like what's happening in my life today. And so I just want to see these clicks and see the stuff live. And I think, like that's the thing. Like you look at some big product that tons of people use, and you're like, how can I take that on? But the other side of it is like, there's no way all those people are happy with this product. They're, and a lot of people will choose free, but some people will pay whatever, 5, 10, 50, $100 a month just to like have something that's better, or better for them, for their needs. So.
Yeah. When like back in the day, when you were building those 3 products, were you able to like, live from the revenue and the profits that those products generated?
Nope.
Okay. So you've always been consulting on the side and building websites, or?
Yeah. So back then that's what we did. So we had the consulting was full time. And then we always joked that like we had, our side projects were all these products, because eventually we wanted to do that. But, it just takes a long time. You guys, with SaaS, it just takes a long time. It doesn't just, there's some people that have this, magic touch, and they can just like growth. I would love to just sit down with one of those people someday and just be like, how do you do this? Like, I don't understand. I can't mentally, like, it doesn't make sense to me how you can just click a button and go to like whatever, 1 million in a year. That's amazing. We didn't do that. So I think, like around the time that we got acquired by GitHub, Harmony was maybe like $5,000 a month. And I think Gauges had gotten to maybe like 2 or 3 or something like that. So between the two of them, we had kind of just decided we had good client projects going on. So we were like, okay, we've got like 8,000 a month. Let's just put like 1 or 2 people on it and see what happens. And if we, lose money for a little while, or if we break even or whatever, that's fine. Cause the 2 or 3 other of us that are doing the consulting work can kind of float and pay the bills. But when it was just Steve and I, we would just kind of alternate. Like we'd have like Steve would work on Harmony, for like a month, and I would do consulting stuff, and then we kind of flip flop. And so it was almost just like a back and forth, and we just used the consulting. We literally, like, we could have made more consulting, a lot more, but we kept it as small and as tight as we could. It was like, okay, we want to survive, and not just like ramen survive, but like, nice life survive. And then anything above that is invested into long-term, which is the products and growing those and getting those to be bigger. So I think that was probably the most intentional thing that we did, was just like start small. Like, don't just quit your job and go straight into a SaaS and think that you're going to like, get back to your salary anytime soon. Like, if that happens, amazing, fantastic, but just don't plan on that. And instead have a backup plan. Like, and so we kind of always, I was joked for a long time, I had 2 jobs. Like we didn't have 1 job, we had 2 jobs. So, and even now I'm not consulting anymore. But that's in part because, Box Out, which is one of the other, companies that I'm in, that I joined, Box Out, pays the bills. So like it pays the bills, and then that gives me the opportunity to do the other ones on the side. And it's okay if they don't make money for a year or two, and I can just, any kind of profits that come off of it, I can funnel back into like other people working on it instead of me, and I can just keep doing my day job. That's fine. So
yeah, it sounds. I mean, it sounds like it's almost like a portfolio approach.
Yep.
You have multiple small successes that overall contribute to a sustainable way of life.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Yeah, I totally agree. Like Andrew Wilkinson, MetaLab, Tiny. Like I love that approach of like, obviously they have some huge businesses now, but I love that idea of like. But I think a lot of it is just like whatever is right or wrong inside me is like I just can't do one thing. I mean, it's kind of amazing to me that I worked at GitHub for 7 years, because like to do like the only way I was able to do that is they got big enough that that I could almost work on different products inside of it. Like I can't even add up. I was there 7 years. I probably had 20, 25, I don't know, 50 different roles when I was there on different, individual services inside the company. So that probably was, I guess, what made that possible, which I guess I haven't thought about until right now. But yeah, I love the portfolio approach. That's actually, now it's intentional. So now my goal is, before it was just like, I just kept building new things because I just always had done that. I've always had idea notebooks and just love, making things. I go back through them sometimes, and a lot of products that exist today, I'm like, oh, yep, I look right here. I'm looking back through, and I'm like, I literally drew this up just like this. I just never executed on it, But now it's intentional. Now I want to have. What I've realized is, being at GitHub from, 40 people to thousands of people. I was like, I don't want to work at a 1,000-person company anymore. I love GitHub. I have no problems with any of it. It's for some people that's what they need. I just prefer the small team, big impact. Control, stuff like that. I'm probably a control freak. That's probably really what drives it. But yeah, now it's intentional.
How do you manage that though, as a small team, when you don't get the economies of, I mean, you have multiple customer support channels, you have multiple marketing, initiatives across multiple products, and you're not very many people. How do you manage that?
So I would say the number, and I've started to realize this over the last like couple of months, the number one thing is standardization. So make everything the same on every product. So, every product is Rails. Every product is Postgres. Every product, uses the same exception tracking. Every product uses Stripe for billing. Every product uses Bootstrap for the Vue stuff. We standardize on all the things that, like, I mean, sure, like I want to try Tailwind. I'm curious about it, but I'm like, I've got 3 products that use Bootstrap that have no problems and that all look gorgeous and not necessarily bootstrappy. So I'm like, that's fine. That's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be new and hot. The goal is for me, and it kind of always has been, is just like, what's the end result for these things? Like, are customers happy? Are we making money? Stuff like that. Whether I'm using, Tailwind or Bootstrap or stuff doesn't really matter. But that's it. It's standardization. And then the second thing that I've been trying to do is figure out how to delegate. Like, I've actually hit not a breaking point, but like for me, what a breaking point, like when I don't generally feel stressed. And so when I feel stressed, I'm like, whoa, something is not right now. Cause I like to, take my time. Like, I have a poster up on my wall that's like, something about like nature not having any deadlines, but yet everything is accomplished. And it's like a tree with like 50 rings is the photo. Like, I'm all about like literally slow and steady. So like, I love that, but I was feeling stressed like a month ago. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Well, between the 3 apps, Box Out's doing really well. The other 2 are growing. I'm like, I have some like extra money to put towards helping to reduce that stress, but I just haven't done it yet because mentally I hadn't like realized what was going on. And it's like trying to push 3 things forward at once, even if you're standardized, is really difficult we have 4 people at Box Out and then 2 at Fewer and Faster. So it's in all, and 2 of the same 4 people are, so really it's like a total of like 4 people. And then 2 of them are kind of pushing all the dev and design and everything for the other 3 products. So yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing is standardization. The second thing is I'm realizing I'm going to have to start bringing on other people to help in order to see if I can move stuff faster, but I've never done it. So I have no idea how good I'll be at it or how terrible.
Yeah. That's helpful.
So
thanks.
Maybe we should recap a little bit. So because you mentioned a lot of product and company names, and I mean,
right.
I kind of knew about them, but for the listener who doesn't know about your history, maybe we can sum it up a little bit. The first 3 products we mentioned, you eventually got acquired by GitHub.
Yep.
I guess it was mostly an acqui-hire or something like that to get more developers.
Yeah. So it was effectively, they were like when I was talking with Chris, he was like, "What if we just merged?" And I'm like, "You're like 40 people, and we're like 5. Like that's not a merger, that's an acquisition." And he was like, "Yeah, that's fair. Okay, what if we just acquire you guys?" So basically, what we did is we were at that point, we were like, "Okay, it's December. We're kind of winding down for the year. We're just about we have 3 proposals out for product like service work that's going to last for 3 to 6 months. So if you want us to start, we can either start December 5th, or we can start in June." And he was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we hadn't even signed the legal paperwork yet. I mean, literally we agreed November 25th. I remember because that's my birthday. And we agreed in email. And then I was like, it's December 5th or whatever. We started. And then the lawyers argued for 3 months until finally we were like, just look, everybody's on the same page, but let's just sign stuff and move on with life. So it was an acqui-hire. They technically we got some cash up front and then options and stuff like that. And then the cash up front was basically for the products because, we were like, we don't want to just shut them down. And they were like, we don't either. That's why part of the reason they wanted to get us is because they like the products. There's several people at GitHub who were like, if anything happens to SpeakerDeck, I'm getting my knife, they love SpeakerDeck a lot. So there was, threats and stuff like that. So we knew SpeakerDeck was going to live on, and we knew Harmony probably wouldn't because they had pages and it didn't really make sense. So we kind of sold that to some friends almost immediately after. I mean, GitHub sold it, we didn't. And then Gages was soon after to some other friends. But yeah, so it was kind of one of those where we can start right away or not. And we just shook hands, and everybody quit working at Ordered List and got, welcome to GitHub letters and worked there. And then as soon as the paperwork went through, then there was, cash and options and all that kind of stuff figured out. So.
Cool. So Ordered List was the umbrella company for all those products. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Definitely learned some stuff there because we had one company for the consulting that was incorporated, and then we had an LLC that we spun up for the products. I don't remember why we did it that way, but we did 2, I think because of ownership, because Steve had a little more ownership in the consulting because he started it originally and I joined him a couple years later. And then on the product side, we wanted the ownership to be split pretty much 50-50. And so when we did that, we just spun up a new company for that. And then we accidentally bought domains from the Inc. for the LLC and all these other things that we learned later are big no-nos. And we had to do all these legal conveyances to convey from this company to the other company. And then eventually we shut down the consulting company and it just disappeared. And then the LLC company was acquired. And then obviously I don't know what happens to it, if they just shut it down automatically when it gets acquired or if GitHub had to do that. But yeah, so we had Ordered List and Ordered List Creations, which was the product one. So,
but the better way to have done it would have been to have one single entity billing service work and funneling up product revenue, any purchases, everything happens under one entity in the event that it's ever acquired.
So it's actually fine to have more than one. The problem that we had is we had one paying for things in the other. So what would have been better? Yes. So yeah, whatever you do it in, you just want that thing to own and control everything.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think probably, and actually what we're doing now with some of the new stuff is using LLCs to change ownership and stuff like that. So I'm setting up an LLC just for myself, and that will own my part in Fewer and Faster, and that'll own my part in Box Out as well. And then Steve's kind of doing the same thing, and that's fine. Then if there's any profit, it just flows all the way to the last one, and it's all passed through taxes and stuff like that. But yeah, the biggest thing is just that whatever owns it, that has to do all the money for that. So you just need to have the ownership right, and then you can move the money where you have to make the purchases with the right place. So
cool. All right.
Yeah, learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
Probably cost a couple $1,000s just to get the domain.
Just hypothetically speaking, that somebody might be trying to earn a living consulting and also building products on the side. I mean,
yes.
I'm just
hypothetically.
Just spitballing.
Yep.
Yeah. So fast forward 7 years or so, you quit GitHub, and then I heard like fewer and faster, box out, sports, Flipper, and SpeakerDeck. SpeakerDeck is still around, so that's
HTT party.
Yep, HTT party. Yep. I haven't been able to turn that into a company yet, but
okay.
So fewer and faster is like your new like umbrella company, or
yep.
is it?
So, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you explain the situation.
Yeah,
I can only guess.
No problem. So basically, Steve was at GitHub as well. He left GitHub and started Box Out Sports, and that was a couple years before I left. And so then when about 2017, I was realizing I was kind of like year 5 or 6, and I was kind of, I think, done with big company. But I still had a decent chunk, I don't know, maybe 10 or 25% of my options that were not like shares yet and stuff. So it was like, well, you don't really want, so I just tried to show up and make a difference every day and do something good. But I knew that I wanted something on the side again. And it was time to like get back out there and start hustling. So I was like, I started thinking, started writing down ideas, like what could I start building on the side to have a runway? I'm super conservative. I'm like the person who runs out the clock in the fourth quarter or, the second half, whatever. Like I'm going to do that. So I was like, I got to have something that's paying for like half or like 3/4 or all of my salary, even if I have to work hard for like an overlapping period, I'd rather do that than struggle and stuff. So I was like, I got to start something. So that's where Flipper started. I was like, maybe that could be a thing. I don't know. Like I wasn't sure if I could make it hosted and if people would trust me and how to figure out some of that stuff. But then I saw, Launch Darkly and a bunch of those showing up, and they were getting like large 8, 10, $12 million funding rounds. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely something there. I think that can be a thing. So I started on that. So I made the company Fewer and Faster because that's my performance model. Like I've done a bunch of performance stuff, and I just boil it down to like performance and making something faster is just about making it happen fewer times or making the individual times that it happens faster. And you can do either one of them, just depends on which one is going to have the biggest impact. So if you're doing 100 queries on a page and you cut it down to 10, it's going to be faster. If you do, 10 queries on a page and they take 200 milliseconds and you cut it down to 100, it's going to be faster. So Fewer and Faster has just been like, I just thought it would be a cool company name because I was just like internally, that was my mental model for like doing that work. And it's my favorite kind of work. So after that, I was like, okay, Fewer and Faster, got that. I'm going to start Flipper and put it in there. And then nothing was happening with SpeakerDeck. So like when SpeakerDeck went and they kept it and they at GitHub and they tried to turn it into this like big talks thing. And like, I don't think any of this is illegal to tell, but, and they were going to have like video and like, it was going to be like this whole thing where you could like automatically record, maybe even like hardware. There was lots of cool ideas in it to turn SpeakerDeck into more than just sharing PDFs online. And then for lots of various reasons, like it just didn't happen. And so then it just sat and languished. And I basically like as on the side at GitHub maintained it. Like I helped with support a little bit, updated for security issues and stuff like that. And eventually a bunch of people started saying like, hey, like nothing's happening with SpeakerDeck. Like, can we buy it? Like we had people actively writing into support and saying, I want to buy SpeakerDeck. And GitHub, like, I think was just like, at that point, I mean, SpeakerDeck is like, losing $1,000 a month or something on a Heroku and AWS bill. And nobody cares about like, it was better to just lose that money every month than to actually go through the due diligence of trying to find a buyer and like get rid of it. And it was just kind of sitting there. And like, finally I was like, I'll do the due diligence. And they're like, okay, cool. And then I was like, I started looking at it and I was like, why don't I just buy it? This is like, I actually am the one that's maintaining it anyways. Why don't I just, and GitHub lets people have things on the side at the time. I assume they do now, but like, I was like, so I just emailed and I was like, hey, like, what if I just bought this back from you? I made an offer and I said, I think it's fair considering it's like negative 12 grand a year, uh-huh. And they emailed back and they like slashed it big time. They were like, yes, they basically just gave it to me almost. I mean, they were super cool about it. But then getting the paperwork done took forever. And so I needed Fewer and Faster because I needed a company to sell it into so that I would still be, limited liability and protected and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then, so it was like, that was like August and then of like 17. And then like late in November, they were like, yes, this sounds awesome. Let's do it. And then on this fateful day, like June 1st, they emailed, they're like, we need to do it today, like out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's weird. And then June 2nd, I saw this rumor that Microsoft was going to buy GitHub. And I was like, oh, that's probably not a rumor. And I know that because and I had tweeted this like cryptic, tweet that was like, oh, I got some great news, everybody. And all of a sudden, like, all these people inside of GitHub were like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just excited about Speaker Deck. What's going on? I don't get what's going on, and so then, yeah, it was kind of funny. So like, eventually I like sleuthed it and figured that out. So like, we literally like signed the paperwork in one day and it was over, and then it was ours. So those two, so Flipper had kind of been started, but like, it was just, we were building it for fun. And then Speaker Deck, we just moved it in on the acquisition. And there was 4 of us. It was myself, Steve, and because I wanted people to help me with it. I didn't want to do it by myself. And then John Hoyt from Ordered List, and he's still at GitHub now. And the last one to remain. And then Eli Miller, he's JQR on Twitter. He was helping us too. And then we kind of did that for like so that's kind of how the company Fewer and Faster started. It's the parent company for Speaker Deck and Flipper. And then Box Out was like when I ended up deciding to leave GitHub. So June 4th was like the announcement. And then like June 10th, my daughter was born, and they have super generous paternity leave. So I'm like, okay. So I did 5 months paternity leave, planning on coming back. And then the Microsoft deal closed on a Friday, and my first day back from paternity leave was Monday. And I was like, yes, sorry, I'm gonna have to resign. And my manager was totally cool about it. They were fine. So then I joined Box Out in January with Steve, just because it was just natural. Like, we've worked together. We always joke we're work spouses. I mean, there was periods in our life where we were together more than with our wives, just because we were work days. All our work days were together in cafes and stuff like that. So it was like, you know what? He's doing a bunch of stuff that's cool. I'm just going to join him again. And so that was Box Out. Box Out's like a sports graphics for social media for colleges, and we're starting to get into high schools pretty heavy as well. And it's really cool. It's kind of similar to Harmony. It's like you have a developer who makes like a template, and the template has what kind of data needs to populate the template. And then the output for Harmony was a web page. And Box Out's the same thing. It's like data that you can put in with like a graphic design that makes an image. And then when you put that data in, you get like a social media image or a MP4. And so that's kind of how Box Out came in. So Fewer and Faster was like out of a necessity to like have a company in order to try to do Flipper, and then to luck upon Speaker Deck. And so we got Speaker Deck. So then that's how those two were. And then Box Out was just like, I wanted to do something after GitHub, and they were 3 people, and so I actually used some of the proceeds from GitHub to basically just kind of like buy in and be an owner, because I didn't want to have a day job. So
it's really so the thing with Box Out. I guess after realizing, okay, let's go after, not intentionally, but basically, let's go after WordPress, Google Analytics, and SlideShare. Box Out does seem like a pretty niche product. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I think that it can be not niche. Like it right now, it's niche in the target audience, but the tech is completely not niche, because you think about everybody who's making screen caps for YouTube, social media graphics, Instagram. I mean, that kind of stuff is like super not niche. So from that standpoint, it's not, but from the initial target audience, it is. And that's mostly because of the first person who started it. He was actually a sports information director for like a local minor league baseball team, and just saw the need and was like, hey, we should do this. Yeah. So that's kind of how that started.
Interesting.
I just love products like that, where it's like a super weird niche that nobody would ever think about building a product for, but then like suddenly you realize there's a need for it, and people are actually like people who are in that target market are actively looking for it and are willing to buy. And
you wouldn't think about it from the outside. You'd have to be like inside. No, this is super painful, and I know all my friends need this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they said they were going to do it, I was like, I was thinking in my head, that's terrible. No one will ever pay for that. Why would anyone pay for that? Yeah. And Steve was even like, I'll just do it cheap for you guys. Like the other two people who were working on it, I'll just do it cheap for you, whatever. Like, a couple $1,000, I'll throw something together and you can see if it works. And then they like pre-sold like 40 grand. And he was like, I would like to be an owner. So like, you don't have to pay me. I'll just be an owner. So yeah. So it's just, it's one of those weird things.
Oh, that's fascinating, man. Cool.
Yeah, I wish I would come across things like that more often.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I mean, that is on the one hand, that should be the benefit of consulting is, access across many things. But the trade-off is that oftentimes you don't spend enough time in the domain to be able to distinguish between, that's a nuisance, but it's fine, versus that's super important and we're not getting it done well enough right now. Be great if somebody built a product specific to that. And also from past experience, it's very rare that like someone comes to you with like 40K in pre-sales. He's just like, I have this great idea. You should build it for me for free, and you will be like an owner, and we'll figure out how to sell and who wants it afterwards.
Yep.
Interesting. Cool. Well, we should wrap up here in just a minute or two. But John, anything we haven't asked about that? Most of the listeners are on the founder's journey, and struggling with the balance and everything that you're familiar with. How do you juggle everything? Find product market fit, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you put your time? Anything we haven't talked about that you haven't shared that you think is a particularly practical nugget?
Yeah, I don't know if it's helpful, but I think the thing that helps me is just to remind myself it's hard. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter how well any of your products are doing. Like balancing your time is difficult. Like with 1, with 3, it really doesn't matter. I feel like that's just either something like you as a person always struggle with, or like somehow you're the person who doesn't, which is probably, on the power law or the bell curve is very, very towards the one side. So, but that's my reminder, is just, it's hard. So you just got to keep working at it and keep trying to make a difference every day.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's very affirming. It feels hard. Good deal. Well, listen, John, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun.
Yeah, so where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at JNunemaker. It's hard, but it'll probably be in the show notes. And then johnnunemaker.com. Those are probably the two best places. And if something's happening in my life, it's on one of those. So
cool. Yeah, thanks for joining us. It was great talking to you. And I feel like we could go on for like another hour or so. But,
easily. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe you come on for another episode in the future.
For sure.
I can be a friend of the pod. I'm happy to. So
great. Thanks for joining us. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.